Hi friends, welcome back to Inspo English. I am Xavier KS. Friends, these days there is a big hue and cry on the topic climate change. A few years back, if I spoke to you on the topic, I am sure many of you would mock at me, laugh at me, telling that it's something that happens in a faraway land or in a different continent, America, Europe, or some other remote part of the world. But it's here at our doorstep. We experienced the disastrous consequences of climate change in our own little state, Kerala, the so-called God's own country. So I thought of speaking to you today on climate change. Friends, according to UN, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. This is something quite natural due to sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. But since 1800, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil and gas. The greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane emitted by the burning of coal, oil and gases act like a blanket wrapped around Earth, trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. Clearing land and cutting down forests also release carbon dioxide. Agriculture, oil and gas operations are major sources of methane emissions. Energy, industry, transport, buildings, agriculture, and land use are among the main sectors causing greenhouse gas emissions. We are responsible. The humans are responsible for all global heating over 200 years. The average temperatures of Earth's surface is 1.2 degrees Celsius, as you know. Warmer than it was before the Industrial Revolution and warmer than at any time in the last 100,000 years. The last decade, from 2011 to 2020, was the warmest on record. Temperature rise is only the beginning of the story. Earth is a system where everything is connected. Changes in one area can influence changes in all others. The consequences. The disastrous effects of climate change include intense droughts, water scarcity, severe fires, rising sea levels, flooding, melting polar ice, catastrophic storms, massive landslides, and declining biodiversity. Climate change can affect our health, ability to grow food, housing, safety, and work. People living in island nations and developing countries are already vulnerable to sea level rise and salt water intrusions, as a result of which they have to be rehabilitated or they are forced to move away from their dwelling places. How shall we overcome this growing threat? UN reports show that limiting global temperature to not more than 1.5 degrees Celsius would help us avoid the worst climate impacts and maintain a livable climate. But The policies currently in place point to a 3 degree Celsius temperature rise by the end of this century. The emissions that cause climate change come from every part of the world, but China, USA, European Union, the Russian Federation, Indonesia, Brazil, and unfortunately our motherland India is also there in the list, contributing half of all greenhouse gas emissions since 2020. The people and nations creating more of the problem have a greater responsibility to take climate actions. The challenge is huge, but many solutions are already known. The three broad categories of actions are cutting emissions, adapting to climate impacts, and financing required adjustments. We have global frameworks and agreements to guide progress, such as Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Framework Conventions on Climate Change, and the Paris Agreement. They suggest switching energy systems from fossil fuels to renewables like solar or wind, which can considerably reduce the emissions. All nations must commit themselves to net zero emission by 2050, but have to act quickly to cut in half by 2030 to save our planet from the imminent climate disaster. Our 2/3 of today's proven fossil fuels need to be kept in the ground by 2050 to prevent catastrophic levels of climate change. Learn to adapt. Adapting to climate consequences can save, protect people, houses, businesses, livelihoods, infrastructure, and natural ecosystems. It covers current impacts and those likely in the future. Adaptation will be required everywhere, but must be prioritized now for the most vulnerable people with the fewest resources to cope with climate hazards. Early warning systems for disasters can save lives and property. Pay it now, or we will have to pay dearly in future. Climate action requires huge financial commitments. Developed countries can support providing considerable amounts to developing countries and underdeveloped countries to adopt and move towards greener economies. Thank you very much for your patient listening. I'll be back with another topic soon. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.